get started with the November 6th meeting of the Cannabis License Enforcement Commission. Kathleen, if you call the roll.
Ron Hogan.
Here.
Kevin Mullis.
Here.
Nelson Miller.
Here.
Diane Shaw. Here. Janelle DeVitch.
Here.
Okay, so the first item we have on the agenda is a review and approval of the minutes from the September 18th meeting. I entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We've got two things on the docket tonight, both of which are meetings with applicants who have been before us previously that the committee desired to have before us to both clarify some things that I think we all felt were relatively minor in nature and otherwise be able to give us additional information so the committee could figure out the direction it wanted to go in with any of the applicants that are generally in the same geographic area. So I think the committee has gotten materials that have been submitted before this that were intended to fill in some of those gaps from a paperwork perspective, and this is really an opportunity for you all, quite frankly, to take and to either put some words behind any of those things or otherwise clarify some of the issues that were outstanding through the prior meetings that we had. And so it's really, I'm going to turn it over to you all to use the time as you see fit, and the committee will jump in and ask questions as we see fit. So
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Jordan Shapiro representing the Frosty Nug applicants, and I can't thank the commissioners enough for giving us this opportunity to come before you again to clarify, as you just said, for the purposes of our having this meeting today. At the prior hearing, there was a concern, an issue, perhaps a glitch in certain ways that we were concerned that we were unable to prove that we were legally able to occupy the premises because we were not having a principal use. That was Mr. Miller's concern, and it was a valid concern. And as you know, we've now solved that problem by getting the entire building. We believe we've solved the problem, hopefully, that we now have the total building is now going to be under our control and our occupancy. So we're very pleased with that. There are a couple of other issues that we are thinking have been unresolved, and we were believing that the community support, getting council support, was something that you felt another applicant was more likely to obtain. We don't believe that's so probable right now, and we think that my clients are more likely to be able to get community support. Actually, my clients have going to be telling you a little bit about some of the strong community support that we already had from some of the abutters to our application.
So can I just jump in?
Sure.
So I do want to be clear. I don't want this to turn into a quasi-community meeting, right? So there's a step in that process.
Right.
Well, I want to make sure, right? So there's a step in the process where once we've done our thing, then the community will have an opportunity to come out and everybody be heard and get the benefit of hearing all that. So I really appreciate if we let that process be that process.
Well, yeah, but previously there was a concern that when you were taking your votes, you wanted to have some confidence that the applicant that you approved was able to go through those other two steps with some confidence. And so we think that that may or may not, however you want to view it, is what the present status of things are. We're not so sure that that particular conclusion that you had, that they were likely to be approved by the other two steps, is so probable right now. I won't say anything further about that. And so, again, we're very pleased to be able to make this presentation. I'm going to really turn it over to my clients to do the rest of the speaking unless there's some particular question for me. So I'm going to have Mike, it's all yours.
Mike Gettings, we've met before, back here again. Thank you very much for having us back to clarify some of the application items that we needed to update. And we appreciate you taking our application as it's coming in somewhat piecemeal. As we put things together, we appreciate the time taken and the commitment that you put forth for the city of Malden. As we stated before, we're a small business. We were incorporated about 18 months ago. We're focused on providing high-quality, premium value cannabis to our customers at unsurpassed service levels and giving back generously to the community of Malden that would support us. We're hoping to open a retail cannabis dispensary in Malden at 639 Broadway, which is within the overlay district. to achieve this goal. We have been working diligently for the past 12 months with Jack Hudson here, who formerly was the founder and CEO of Airmont, which was one of the first medical marijuana operations in the state of Quincy. Comes well recommended, and we have a reference from the mayor of Quincy if that's necessary. Jack is a close friend of mine. I've been here for 6 years, and I was very aware of what he was going through during the process that he was running Airmont, and once he became available, we immediately grabbed him, and we have been working with Jack for over 100 hours. Jack has helped us craft all of our comprehensive policies and procedures. He has worked before with CCC regulations on the medical side. We have taken them and looked at what those CCC policies and how we could modify them for recreational. So these are policies and procedures that are tried and true and have been used at Airmont. Our application, as you've seen, is 631 pages. It's got everything in it. These are policies that we believe are very thorough and very well thought out. We didn't just take the regulations from the CCC and cut and paste the page. We have been meeting now for 18 months, working as a team and developing a set of procedures and policies so that we can get off to a start should we be approved. I'm also here today with Dr. Dominic Garibaldi, who is also another owner of the Frosty Nut.
Thank you. Thanks again, everybody, for granting us a second interview. We have a great team here. We've really worked hard for the last several months trying to put this all together. We went over this display prior, so it's, community compassion compliance. But we also have, what I've noticed in the past, people that were moved forward, there were some medical, such as Dr. Kernick with Medicom, and we had a pharmacist on board. Well, I have a pharmacist and also a pain management specialist, if you want to add to it. Plus, I plan on retiring from my business at 32 years and working at this facility also. So if you feel more comfortable having a medical specialist at the facility, I have a daughter who's also interested, who's pursuing her nurse practitioner degree right now in both psychology and addictive behaviors. I have a younger daughter who's also pursuing for licensed social worker right now, who's also interested. I have a son who's a chemical engineer who does water purification for pharmaceutical corporations. So I'm well vested into research and also the medical sciences. I think we could bring a lot to Malden. There's a lot of potential here. We plan on hiring local people from Malden. And I think it's a win-win. We bring the whole, you're only seeing part of the team here. We do have other people involved.
And Brian Belts is another owner.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people have consultants, but a lot of the consultants haven't built a business themselves. A lot of them have just worked for other companies. It's going to be very difficult to find a consultant like Jack Hudson, who has built a business from scratch and not just been responsible for a certain part of the company. So we have him, and I'm also a sole equity applicant. I'm very honored to be part of the Cannabis Control Commission social equity program. So not only do we have Jack, but we have non-stop free consulting from the Cannabis Control Commission because I have been deemed somebody that's been impacted by the war on drugs. I believe I'm the only applicant that is a social equity applicant. And we actually get priority status. So if we were to get moved forward with the host agreement, we would jump to the front of the line in the application process because the commission wants our business so bad to be represented in the industry in Massachusetts. And we'll get a little bit more into that later. But and of course, Jack, we still want to talk about what you've done that maybe some other experience that you have that might be more useful to us than
But you started off with a good point, because when I was getting involved in this, the only consultants available were Arizona, California, Colorado. They knew nothing about the Massachusetts regs, nothing about the marketplace, nothing about build out, with the weather extremes that we have on the East Coast. So to be able to work with a group, and I'm very selective of who I work with, they're dealing with somebody, unless I sold myself to them. Where you guys see a team here, when I met with the city of Quincy, it was me. When I started out on the venture, I didn't have anybody else for the first except a board that I put together. But for about the first 9 months, it was just my figuring out what needed to be done, working with these consultants that after a while I realized weren't as helpful as I had thought they would be. And when I say that, there are specifications of Massachusetts that are different from other states. So anything that these consultants had to say that the other states were doing weren't helpful for me in Massachusetts. So the benefit here of these guys working with me is it was in Massachusetts that I did this. And from ground up, I mean, getting financing, figuring out how much financing we needed. We raised $6 million. We really needed to raise 10. But finding people who were local residents as opposed to out-of-town private equity people or people who just had money looking to invest in Massachusetts. All of my 20 lenders were, except for my mother in Connecticut, were from Massachusetts. So as far as, it's like what could I bring while the store is getting ready to be opened? I designed a dispensary. Worked with city planning on that as well. As far as staffing, figuring out what we needed, how many we needed, when that staffing was going to change from the business growing. And then as far as the job descriptions for those, we've worked on those already. And from the job descriptions, then it's going to be looking for employees. And from the hiring that we did at Airmont, it's not hard to find people who want to work for you. It's an exciting industry for the people who are getting into it. So you've got employees who are, very well motivated to really give great customer service, to respect the town they're in. Because I was really big on, we used to have detail at the facility in the afternoons. And it was very important to me that the city of Quincy knew who was coming in and out of Airmont, which was part of the reason why we had detail. But it just, we were hosted by Quincy, so that was the the attitude that I always had. So it was, it was respect. It was being transparent. It was being honest. When times were coming up for the host agreement payments, coordinating of when that was going to happen, who's getting the check, and all that. When, in those days, the Department of Public Health coming in for inspections, they could be in your office anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, and they had done that in Airmont. And, what was important for me with that was to not, for me to be with the regulatory body the whole time, or my COO, who was also an attorney. It was having the staff deal with the compliance piece, because they were trained to deal with it. They knew how important it was. They didn't agree with some things. They didn't agree with a lot of the regs, but they had to do them because that's the law. So when it's, client interactions, dealing with the software that we're going to need to implement, and interfacing with the state system, that's all stuff that I've done. Figuring out what your inventory levels are going to be at the very beginning and what your pricing is and how you're not going to advertise because you can't. What are other ways, social media or through public relations efforts to get your name out there? That's all stuff that I've done here in Massachusetts. So, in working with a client like the Frosty Nug, I see the way that Mike has even adopted my transparency and honesty perspective. I had a lot of people I worked with who just were not happy that I conducted myself that well. But that was the way I did, and that's the way I'm trying to download my information to Mike and to Dominic and to Brian. And as far as being there when we're opening, during build out, making sure things are going well, I will be there. And like I said, getting the dispensary set up to be opened, with product, following CCC guidelines, following your guidelines as the city, they're working with someone who's done that before. So that's what I bring.
Right, but we'll just kind of skip to the stuff that has changed. Go to the next one. So I just want to reiterate my social equity applicant status. There's only 2 businesses in the state right now that are open by social equity applicants, which is very troubling. The movement right now in the marijuana industry is let's help people that have been impacted by the war on drugs. I've been impacted by the war on drugs. I've been deemed a social equity applicant by the state. So they're trying to help uplift me because it's generally people like me who aren't able to get into the industry. So the benefits that they're giving me is priority status through the CCC. So once we get our host agreement, we jump ahead of everybody else that is applying in this city. I'm right now taking classes, a 6-month course directly with the CCC to train me on compliance, operational support, the best industry practices, trade skills. They're basically going to make me a full 360 professional in this industry. And not only that, we also have Jack on top of that. So with those 2 things combined, we think we are the safest option. Also, we're the only ones that will be able to do deliveries for 2 years. We have an exclusivity period. So they're trying to help people like me get ahead. And so they're giving us 2 years to do deliveries. What that means is we can deliver in Malden for 2 years when no other businesses can, and we can extract tax money from surrounding cities if that is something that the city moves forward with. And that would also mitigate the traffic and the parking to the area. Because if we're doing deliveries, then it'll stop traffic from coming into the area. So that's about it for that.
And I can say to that point, by being able to have a direct contact to the regulatory body is incredibly helpful. There were times where, we were uncertain about how to do things because the regulations weren't clear. So it was, submitting an email into the Department of Public Health and waiting for a response to come back. And it could be anywhere from a week to 4 weeks. And it's not a ding on them, it's just all that they've got going. And in those days, it could have been that long. For Brian to be able to have that direct contact is from my perspective, pretty significant.
If you're pro-cannabis, you should applaud Brian, because Brian was the main person in the state to obtain most of the signatures for cannabis in the state. I mean, he's modest about that, but he was the leading. He worked 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, obtaining signatures for several months. And he was the number one. He's the best at getting signatures.
Yeah, the original bill that the people voted on said that this industry would be accessible to the people impacted by the war on drugs, which it hasn't been so far. It's been, generally wealthier individuals who may have not had to deal with the impacts of the war on drugs. So for Massachusetts to take that step and step up and make sure that this industry is equitable for minorities, people impacted by the war on drugs, I hope we're setting an example on a nationwide level. And I hope that Malden will as well. We're going to reiterate, we have 1.9 million. I think you guys already know this by now.
Yeah, but I think we were asked a question, I think we was asked a question to specify where the funding was coming from, and we answered that question. But this is kind of a breakout again. It more accurately explains where the funding is coming from. We have in excess of $1.9 million to put towards this. Our capital expenditure is going to be somewhere around $365,000. And our operating expenses are $408,000, and our construction build out we got a quote from Kitchen Design. Molly Kitchen will be, as she's a local Malden entrepreneur, we're working closely with her.
The key factor is we plan on working these facilities. We don't plan on developing multiple shops and selling it to some Canadian corporation. We plan on being here. That's the difference.
So you've seen this slide before, and this kind of identifies all of the areas that are banned around Malden and potential areas that we could generate more revenue in, and then we.
Can I just jump in just real quick on the
Sure.
financial side? If you mind?
Oh, sure.
Bryce, and and it's not something we, it's all that important to clarify right now, but it will be if you're able to move forward. So some of the supplemental documents that you gave will need to be cleaned up a little bit. They don't reconcile, right? So you had a couple applicants that show us having the same percentage of capital with different capital amounts, and they don't necessarily tie to what's on the screen there. So
Oh, on the original application?
no, on the supplemental ones that you sent in, they still don't tie out. Now,
Oh, okay.
so you definitely want to go back. I think it shows both, I think it shows two folks with 34% of the capital contributed with different dollar amounts, and then.
Well, there should be a corporation also. It was, there should be a loan from his corporation, I believe.
I'm just going on what's in the application, Brian, so it shows, you should take a look at that section, and it doesn't reconcile to some of the numbers up here, so
Okay.
we would just clean that up. So, go ahead.
Thank you for that observation.
And this is how we do our market analysis, and we bought data from Washington State, two sets of data, to determine kind of where we should focus and determine where our revenue numbers are coming from. And you've seen the slide before, but this is kind of how we got to our number of, within the first 3 years, we project that we're going to be at $5 million, and then in the first 5 years, we're going to be somewhere around $7 million revenue, which is somewhat conservative. But we felt that, as you can see, we took the normal road of the dispensaries that have started up in the same time frame in Washington State, which is the state that reports the most data of any state available. And this is the startup period where these dispensaries started right outside of Seattle. That's where we got our numbers from. These are, as I mentioned before, we've been working now for 18 months as a corporation. In that time period, we have established a lot of relationships locally. One relationship we initially started out with right away was getting the trust of Santander, because at the time, banks would not work with us, and we needed to be able to write checks for our vendors. And they welcomed us, and they opened a bank account with us. Since then, we have been looking at GFA and Century Bank to handle our transactions. We also have started the safe harbor process, and that process is a process that vets all of marijuana dispensaries to make sure that they are not laundering money or have any terrorist activity. So it would be, it's a procedure that anyone would go through that's dealing with money. My background comes from a little bit of money, in a sense that one of the first jobs I worked on was automating the money room at the MBTA. So that was an entirely money collecting operation, and a vault, and tying all of that out so I can understand where the safeguards are there. We then went out and said, well, we have to really establish relationships with suppliers, because right now the supply is tight. That may not be the case 2 or 3 years from now, but we need to talk to everyone. We need to set up relationships right away. We have 3 letter of intents, one from Commonwealth Alternative Care in Taunton, one from Revolutionary Clinics out in Fitchburg, and one from Wicked Frosty Farm. And we have also talked with all these other vendors, and they have assured us that they will supply us once we get a host community agreement. The Revolutionary Clinics, we met out there with Ryan Hansen, and we did a full tour of his facility, and we've also done a full tour of Airmont, and Jack was there. Ryan extends an invitation to the commission if you would like to go out there and view the facility, look at cultivation, processing, and all the products. It's a fully integrated facility. We want to hire locally, and when we started our build-out, we immediately met with Pigeon and Latitude, 2 local groups, and we started with the design, and you'll see the design tonight that they worked on with us.
I'm sorry, Bobby, the suppliers, you have 3 Commonwealth Alternative, Wicked Frosty, Revolution. On these, there's like an end date, December 31st for your letter of intent. I'm assuming that you're
Yeah, that's in the,
extending.
yes, that's in the back of my mind.
Well, you
Okay.
can actually sign a contract if you're not licensed. It's
Yeah.
illegal, so the letters of intent aren't really binding. You can't really sign a binding letter of intent. So it's just kind of is to show that we have established relationships, because it's illegal for us to sign an actual contract. Because if we don't get the license
Okay.
and the contract is pushed on us, then we're committing a federal crime.
Okay. But, you know, that at least that says that, yeah, okay.
I'm going to move quickly through this last one. We worked with CPL Electronics, and that's how we came up with such a comprehensive security plan. They worked at Airmont and set up Airmont security. We are also working with locally with Jordan. We have established, our accountants are AAS CPAs, and they have the premier cannabis accounting firm. They have the most clients in the cannabis industry. They filed our returns for us. They have a array of consultants and tax professionals to help us work through all the 280E regulations, which we have to be very cognizant of. The rest of it is we'll go into as we go through the rest of the slides, unless anyone has another question on our partnerships. This is the current location. We got an addendum to our lease, which we provided as part of our package, and we will be occupying 3,640 square feet of this building. We will be the sole occupant. We will be buying out Cole's Pizzeria.
And he's wanting to go, and he's
Yeah.
ready to go. He's on his way to Florida now.
There's no-
He's happy about the whole transition. We didn't push him out. He's wanting to go. He's waiting for this to happen.
Just one, it says change monthly annual, it says 16,000, I think it's just, we needed to add a zero. Unless the rating it said 16.5, should be 165.
Oh,
Out of the buy-out.
that's
It's
monthly,
monthly.
That's
and
monthly.
that's yearly.
Okay, that's,
Yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah, so
good.
if you multiply that.
Oh,
so
okay,
you get
so,
to
okay,
the year,
because the
yeah.
other one was set 165,000 from, the original was 165,000 for the year, so that's why it was,
Oh, yes, I can understand.
Yeah, okay.
That's confusing.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah. And we contacted all of the abutters within 300 square feet and introduced ourselves. Told them that we had the intent of opening a dispensary at Cole's, and we wanted to introduce ourselves. We wanted to hear from them what, if they had any objections, and if they didn't have any objections, how they felt about us being there, and we wanted them to meet us and know that they could stop in if something did come up and they wanted it corrected, that we would work with them. And we have signatures of many of the surrounding letters, and we'll just pass that around to see the different neighborhoods, the different dates and times that we met with them. So our location does not impact a residential neighborhood, and we believe we do not need a zoning variance.
I think we had 6 copies that
Yeah.
our entire board should have an extra one for the seeker too.
I had a question on supply agreement. Can you enter into a supply agreement contingent on receiving your licensing, other than?
Not that I know of, but that's a good question. The attorney we originally had said no. We had a marijuana attorney we were working with, but I mean, you'd think you'd be able to. But he said that all you can do is a letter of intent. That's what he advised us. That's something I'll probably ask the commission next time I see them at one of my classes, because that's probably one of those questions only they could really give us an answer to, because it's pretty complex.
I could tell you from Airmont, I wouldn't have done it. Yeah, for a couple of reasons. One, you're going to be dealing with accountants who are going to be looking at any contracts you have, and if it's something that's contingent upon a license, everything in this industry is so ripe for major attack that following as much of a hard line as you can is what I always suggest to do. So something like that, to me, would raise a red flag. And so I wouldn't, it's not really a contract. So it's like, why do I have this?
Right.
Am I looking to inflate revenue? Am I looking to, help the supplier, be able to say that he's got more items to ship? So it's, I don't think it's a good practice.
I attended a meeting last week at the Social Law Library at the John Adams Courthouse, and it was all attorneys. I was the only non-attorney. It's kind of frightening to be surrounded with about 50 attorneys. And they seem to be developing the rules and regulations as they go along. So there's a lot of questions that are still unanswered that they weren't able to answer, that they're coming together and trying to resolve now. So there's a lot of questions that are yet to be discovered.
This is our proposed parking plan, and how those are just quickly, you've seen it before. We contracted out with Mass and Associates. They did a study, and we presented that to you. It was based on Colorado and California, and it was an engineering-based study where individuals actually counted the number of cars that went into dispensaries. Based on the size of the dispensary we're looking to open, they felt that we needed to have 56 dedicated parking spots. What we have done is, because we have the entire building here, we have identified the 30 spots that we would be allotted from our landlord. He has reached out to the property next door, 639 Broadway, and we have provided you with the lease of 26 additional parking spots, which would be the first row here. And you can see where it's kind of blocked off with white additional. And then we were told that if we do need additional parking, we could then ask the landlord for an additional 26 and lease those out independently. So we would enter into an agreement with 639 Broadway separately.
So we have a total of how many spots then? 56?
82.
82 with the additional, okay.
And if we needed more, we could negotiate those with them, because it seems like our business and his business would be operating at different times. Oh, yeah. 6:30. So in our parking plan, we will have a separate entrance and a separate exit. We'll have a camera monitored parking lot. We'll have an attendant if we need to have a traffic detail to help with traffic. We will definitely have a traffic detail. And we also, on our website, have the capability to do online reservations, and we can go into that a little bit if you need more further explanation of that. But that would be where somebody orders ahead, and it's also can be used as a capacity control, because we can limit how many people make a reservation to come to the parking lot and purchase their product. If they do not have that time slot approved as within a reservation, then we'll return to it.
It's 5:34. Do you know if now that they're taking over the whole building, what the number of parking spots per square footage is required on top
It's
of it?
4 per thousand, so it's 3,600 square feet. So it's a lot less than 52.
Okay, that's okay. Less than 52.
We're taking a building that's kind of a blight, no curbside appeal, and when you see the next slides of the design, it's going to be quite a benefit to Malden.
Yeah, so vision and design, we are looking to have a modern look and appeal. We have a security wall here, and we reduced the windows that you see, so it's higher security, more fortified exterior walls. Separate entrance and exit. It would be entering in here through the front and exiting over here. So there'll be a nice customer flow when we go in, and it'll be easier for controlling and easier for security.
And we have a secure delivery entrance also.
Yes.
Which we also could put up a high enough fence so a certain daycare center does not have any visibility to the facility at all. It would be blocked by a fence.
This is the exterior, and employees would enter into here. I think you've seen it before. It's a double door. You can't enter the second door without shutting it first. Visitors will also enter in here and be greeted by a manager and have to have all entries will be recorded, and we have a badge system. We have a very elaborate security policy, and within that security policy, we've identified the software that we're going to use, and we're going to have badges, we're going to have color code badges, we're going to have access to certain areas, and employees will have access to certain areas, and visitors will always be accompanied when on site. The additional space we've chosen to use as a garage space back here, so that we will now have our deliveries come in here, and we'll have a garage door that will shut behind the delivery. So it will be completely secured when the truck is being unloaded. We will follow the reverse when we have like a Brinks truck come in to pick up the money, and we'll have a garage back there. Other than that, there haven't been any changes in the process here, or I'm sorry, in the layout. This is our security plan. We've added security for the new area. You can see it's pretty well equipped with cameras and motion detectors. We work very closely with Brendan Kavanaugh from CGL. I've seen this before. We're under contract with Dr. Uma. She is helping us with all our pamphlets and all of our brochures and education. She'll help educate all of our employees. We will also be working closely with Paul Hammersley from Malden, Overcoming Addiction. We will display their materials, and we will have a message, a combined message that doesn't contradict each other. We have some pretty aggressive diversity goals that we are very proud of, and we will be looking to hire at least 60% women, people of color, LGBT community, and people with disabilities.
We just kind of want to summarize why we think we are the best choice for Malden. For one, we're the only social equity applicant. We're going to be open before anybody should be because of our priority status and also the additional assistance from the CCC. Our consultant has probably about the best experience you could ever ask for in a consultant. We have a lot of parking, 82 parking spaces. We're well funded. We have more than enough to fund this operation on our own, and also pay for unforeseen costs that might happen along the way. This is our primary business. We're going to be there full time. Diversity, we're 100% LGBT business, which is another group that has been underrepresented in the cannabis industry. It's on their website. They have statistics, and people of color, veterans, people with disabilities, and LGBT are disproportionately not in this industry. The community promise, we're going to hire locally and pay $16 an hour. And we're planning to provide free education on site and in the community.
And
benefits.
Our pay management specialist is also a donor.
And this will be our primary business. So when you walk the door, you'll see one of us. You'll see myself, Brian, or Dominic. At any point, you'll know who to contact if you have a problem. We're the ones that we're going to be here. We're not going to be selling our license. We've entered into a 15-year contract with the property, and we hope to be on.
And entering in with Paul, you know that's a lot of work.
So we'd like to open up questions.
Anybody knows it?
Back to your site plan, you don't have to go to it. The structure in the back, behind the building, the garage structure, what's the plan for that? Is there a plan for that?
Oh, the
separate
auto
structure,
body.
yeah.
We are unaware of what the only thing that we know is that it will stay when it is now. We don't know if I have any information about it.
So your site plan and parking is going to kind of work its way around that?
Yes, I can show you that. We didn't go back into that area in the air.
That's okay. You don't have to go back.
Okay.
And I just had one other question. Jack, when you were talking, when you were speaking about the Frosty Night as a group, you referred to them as a client. Does that mean that there's a relationship that at some point is going to come to an end, or?
No, 'cause I'm the chairman of the board as well.
Yeah, well, I noticed that.
So
When you
right-
called them a client, it seemed like.
Yeah, no, right
those two
now
things
they,
didn't line up with each other.
now right now they are a client because they're not licensed. And once they're licensed, I mean, they're a client because they're not licensed. And once they're licensed and the board is active, I'll be on the board.
Okay.
And a client in the sense that you're the consultant, there's a consulting agreement.
Yeah, there's a consulting agreement. I'm paid for this.
Right.
Professional goals or whatever would need to go accompany it. So,
And we think our advantage is that if something were to happen where he wanted to walk away from all this, we have the CCC, as a social equity applicant, I have nonstop access to the CCC and free consulting. So should he decide he wants to move to Hawaii and get out of the cold weather, then we have a guaranteed backup in place already, right now.
it won't be as good though.
I know. The CCC, yeah, he knows more than that.
Can I just add, very impressed with George Lance's, what role would he have?
He'd be also developing with education department, and also he's interested in also participating with the business build out and everything.
Okay.
So he's worked with Leahy and also Dartmouth, and he's runs Pain Management Center in Manchester, New Hampshire right now.
Okay, JL, do you have anything?
Our pharmacist is also currently engaged in taking a completing his cannabis course, so he's also pursuing that also. And that's where some confusion has been taking place. Is for retail, it's not supposed to be giving any medical advice, but I think everybody feels a little bit more comfortable having somebody in health services provide advice, at least have somebody there. And I know I do, so it's kind of one of those gray zones, like, you know.
But it's not gray.
Well, I mean,
as far as the regulations.
No, with regulations, I understand.
So again, this was an opportunity, so you certainly have I think between the last meetings and now, we provided us documents to help fill in some of the gaps or cure, the confusion, if you will, around the primary use. Provided some additional documents just to clarify the financial roles of each, give us an opportunity to ask any other outstanding questions. Our idea, as you know from the last time we spoke, was that I think from the committee's perspective, there's 3 candidates with a very close geographic area. We felt that if we were going to end up picking one of those, and I'm not saying the committee's decided to limit it to one, but if it ends up being a path the committee goes down, then it was fairest to give everybody a chance to sort of have one more bite at feeding before. So that's what tonight was all about. I think the committee's had its questions answered, and if there's nothing else, we certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just before we get started, with you all, I do want to just mention, there's some folks here in the audience that are from the community that are here, I think, expressing their sort of their views on the passage of marijuana or something that's legal to be sold both in Massachusetts and in the case of Malden, Malden as well. And the committee certainly respects that right. I think that information's been provided to folks to try to clarify the role of, both the local government, the city council, and this body, which is not to decide whether or not it's legal to sell marijuana in Massachusetts or in Malden, but to supply the rules under which it can't be sold because the voters have decided that that's the case. So I felt like I just wanted to go on the record. I certainly appreciate some of the folks that are here expressing that desire, but it's not the role of this body in this meeting. Certainly isn't for us to decide whether or not marijuana is right for Massachusetts or for Malden. The voters did that in 2016, and when they did that in Malden, it opened the door to marijuana being sold in Malden. So I do appreciate you all taking your time to be out there and holding up your signs, and I'm hoping that at least helps put that, the awkwardness exists from that, to the side. So we do appreciate you guys coming back. I think, as you know from watching the prior meetings, we had sort of 3 applicants in a fairly close geographic area. It was difficult to deal with one without dealing with them all, even though there might not have been as many open questions with the applicant that you had submitted initially, and we will appreciate that. We felt it was fair to give everybody a chance to come back and fill in any blanks that might have existed, and otherwise just give you an opportunity to be heard from one last time as we try to look at the group as a group and figure out what direction we want to go in. So this is your time to go ahead and be able to do that and tell us anything that you want us to hear in that regard. So I'm going to turn it over to you all.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you for inviting us back to continue the conversation regarding 75 Broadway. Here tonight, myself, Justin Smith, CEO of Celtic Green. Alongside me, I have Jason Sidman, CEO of Sanctuary Medicinals, a wholesale supplier. Mike Allen, Head of Security and Compliance for Celtic Green. Tyler Ohazo, COO of Celtic Green, and Carrie Ann Ohazo, CFO of Celtic Green. Our mission at Celtic, again, is the 3 Ps of business. We strongly believe in people, product, and process. So in our establishment, we plan to serve customers 21 years of age or older, the highest quality products within the state. In doing that, we're really striving to create a branded company. So we want our products to be recognized as the highest quality. We want to be known as a location that can come through on a consistent basis with those products. The way we're going to achieve that is by employing a diverse, socially representative group of employees, as many local employees as possible. We've also listed in our application, working with Revere as well as a recognized area of disproportionate impact. So within the state guidelines, we want to try to adhere to that and work with them as best we can. We plan to accomplish our goals through our state-of-the-art user experience. So at our location, we feel is a very good location for this sort of establishment. Throughout our process with the city of Malden, we get things up and running. We plan to develop a very strong relationship with the community. We want to help work with community programs, anything that's underfunded. We don't want to be presumptuous and assume what those things are, so we'd like to get to the point of working with the city on those items. And really our goal is to ensure a sustainable, long-term business relationship with the city. So key components to a successful marijuana establishment, we feel there's 3 main things that are very important. First off, wholesale supply and training. We're fortunate enough to be able to work with Jason and his company, Sanctuary, by way of he's agreed to a priority supply agreement with Celtic once we're up and operational. Also within that agreement comes with a level of training within Sanctuary located in Littleton. So Sanctuary is already recognized as one of the leaders within the state, not only for operations, but products, really all aspects of their business. So we feel that we've chosen the right person to go through that mentorship program with. Second thing is the location. Again, we really feel this location is perfect for this. It was a previous fast food establishment. So it has all the ADA compliance, more than enough parking. Location we feel is very good for being off kind of by itself, aside from the other applicants, as well as the proximity to neighboring cities which are not participating in cannabis sales. Third thing also is security. We feel very strongly about how capable Mike and his team are from a security and compliance standpoint. And, once this all kicks off down the road, that's kind of going to be a very important thing, working with Chief Mollis on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week, month-to-month, making sure everything is in line. Part of the mentorship program, not limited to, but we have learned and are continuing to learn about wholesale flower, marijuana-infused products, real-time inventory replenishment, management of inventory, staff training, standards, and operating procedures. Jay has also commented on some design aspects, having owned a store, he's familiar with what works, what doesn't work, so it's been very helpful as well. Product knowledge classes, with Sanctuary's medical director as needed, as well as advice with regulatory compliance and guidance. Our location, so we have a signed long-term lease. We have more than enough parking spots at 44 parking spaces designated, as well as a drive-through area, which is pre-existing. The thought with that is we can use it for up to 16 employee cars. If down the road a drive-through became an option, it's still sort of just excess parking at this point. So we feel we meet the parking criteria. We're positioned away from school zones, convenient highway access, zoned highway business. The standalone building is 3,500 square feet, so it's plenty large enough to conduct the business. We will reduce any traffic more so than what's there that's going to impact the area. Our entry vestibule is also larger than many, so we can actually queue customers within inside the building as opposed to any sort of appearance of a line outside the building. And all these things will ultimately enable us to take care of our customers as efficiently as possible. So this is an overview of the site itself. You can see in the gray, we have 44 total spots. So 42 of those are regular, and then 2 are designated handicap parking spots, which we would need to have. And then again, it sort of depicts the 16 cars, which would be employee cars, going through the drive-through lane, which currently exists. So the existing site, as many of you are aware, is sort of just a blighted location. It's been vacant for about 8 years at this point. The existing tenant really has no, there is no, I should say the landlord doesn't have a real motivation to oust them. So the property will literally just sit this way for close to another decade, most likely, if nothing progresses in this category, I would think. So in taking the building that's there, we're kind of keeping the general look of it. And then as you can see with these pictures, we're really sprucing up the outside. Again, we have more than enough space within the layout to do what we need for design. So the way the store functions, so as part of the retail training experience that we've been going through, we feel that there's many different ways to set up a store. The way we feel works the best to kind of keep the flow moving is we have this large entry vestibule, as you can see in these 2 pictures. A customer will walk in the door and they'll be greeted, and then they'll be asked to produce a form of identification. Once the identification is scanned, they'll have a choice to go into the facility and either meet with a bud tender, who will be somebody who can educate them, talk them about products, answer any questions that they may have. You also have an option within the vestibule to do an order right there on the spot, which you can then take to the point of sale checkout. We're finding that typically people's first experience at the store, they might want to see a bud tender and kind of get a feel of it, but from there on, as they revisit, they tend to do their orders and go directly to the point of sale. So once you pass through the vestibule, you will either stand at one of these counters with the bud tender or a case that have product in it. Again, you can discuss the product at that time. And then in the background, you can see the point of sale. As you make your way from there, you go to the point of sale, where people will be entering from the entry vestibule directly to the back to actually check out. So many times it's a short process. The average is about 7 minutes per visit per customer. So here's the floor plan itself. As you can see, again, across the whole front is a pretty large entry vestibule. We can probably have about 20 or 30 people queued up in there at any given time, which falls in line with sort of our expectations of how many people we expect to see per hour. As you move into the dispensary floor, you've got 2 of those cases, so plenty of space for people to move around, pass through, and then plenty of point of sales in the back here. We'll also have some open freestanding tables where people can consult with medical sort of practitioners that will work through the system if they have specific needs and questions about what tender can help them with.
Are you considering like online sales where they can order online and come in and pick it up?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that for sure. And then within the store too, we plan to have everything somewhat automated, so on iPads. So not only for the customer's benefit, but for our employees. It's an ever-changing array of products. So it could be on a daily basis, you see one thing and then 10 of them are gone. So we want to keep that updated so that if there's a question, then the employee can have the information right in front of them to assist, and then also they can do the order on the iPad so it can be electronically sent up in the front to keep everything in order. But we definitely plan to do online. But part of the reason why we're going with this approach, as I said, there's a lot of stores you can walk in, sit in the waiting area. There's many different ways of experiencing Cannabis store. We feel that this sort of, it helps people, educate them as they walk in, but it also moves them through the process of the store so we don't get backed up. We're sort of controlling the flow without just unloading 20 people in one area together. And then you'll see in the back we have, staff areas, inventory, plenty of space to conduct everything. It's more than enough space. The actual financials, so the way we arrived at our financials is we took the location at 75 Broadway, and then we took a 10-minute radius from there. So that comes up with 120,000 people population. Within that population count, we're suggesting, and this is somewhat of an industry average, that 7.5% to 10% will be actual consumers in the store. So when looking at those numbers, 120,000 on year one, taking consumer user population of 7.5%, which we think is modest, it puts you at about 9,000 people per month, or 300 people per day, and about 25 people per hour. So I think those hourly counts, in conjunction with parking, our supply agreements, everything are all in line with each other in terms of what we're proposing to actually do. So, there's a lot of factors there. We don't know. What we know is what we know, which are these population numbers. We also know we have municipalities that are banned around us, so that's going to influence some locations over others, as well as projecting year one numbers. We don't know how many licenses will be given or who will be operable at that point. So, it's somewhat known what we can pull as information we have, but it is information within the state, within this direct area that's supposed to be representative of this town, city, and the cities around it. This chart just shows sort of how we're arriving at. You notice how the numbers, although the prices go down for the price per pound, the actual numbers are going up. So what's happening there is our actual supply is going down in cost over the years, but the percentage of consumers purchasing the products is going up. So we're actually seeing an increase, although the numbers are fluctuating. So this chart sort of goes over the cost per pound, cost per ounce, what it retails at within the store, and sort of how that transpires back to the city with the each city pays, and so on and so forth. So what sets us apart? Again, we think that the location we have requires minimal fit out, which means that if we can get to a provisional license relatively quickly, which nothing's quick in the state, we could be one of the first to create this revenue stream within the city. We also have an established banking relationship with Gardner Federal Credit Union, who runs the Safe Harbor program. It's a program that started in Colorado. It's the safest way to do the banking in the state at this point. That's all set up with Gardner Federal at this point. Again, the guaranteed supply from Century Distillers from Jason, which will allow us to, conduct business and hit the projections that we're laying out here. Again, not to be presumptuous, we would like to be involved with the community, charitable donations. We plan to do as much as possible. We'd like to sort of dig a little further and see what type of things really people want to see this aid go to. Mandatory voluntary community service for all employees, so we will be providing that, as well as education curriculum in schools, if that's desired as well. So this is just going to be a quick little run through of the store again, just showing the outside, quick fly through sort of as you approach as a customer into this entry vestibule as we were talking about before. So likely be chairs wrapped around the whole inside of that. People come on a first come, first served basis. Again, showing them where the bud tenders would operate, showing people products, and then the point of sale checkout. And again, most experiences for people tend to be on an average of 7 minutes. So. I'm going to pass it along to Mike Allen to discuss some security and compliance aspects.
Thank you, Justin. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present before you again this evening. Just to recap my background and my experience in the industry, I have spent the last 38 years being involved in public safety and security. Prior to me getting into law enforcement, I spent 5.5 years in the United States Air Force, spent 30 years with the Rochester, New Hampshire Police Department, my last 5 as police chief. retired and have since my retirement been involved in the industry now as a consultant for the last 3 years. So I've been involved in the opening and build-out of not just retail dispensaries, but medical dispensaries, cultivation facilities in both Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Most of my work being here in the state of Massachusetts. So I'm very familiar with the regulations here and what's required for all of these types of operations. I went over the security requirements or the security issues that we're planning to do at this facility. So I'll just quickly recap again just what those were, just to refresh the committee. But some of the highlights were on-site security. We'll always have one on-site security person working at the facility, and particularly when we open, there'll be obviously as many as necessary to ensure a safe operation, that there are no traffic issues, there are no crowd queuing issues outside. As Justin mentioned, the expanded vestibule along with pre-ordering, the pre-ordering system that he mentioned, and potentially if we need to go to an appointment-only system to start, those are all things that we are prepared to implement to mitigate any traffic issues, any crowd queuing issues at that location. And those are things that have been implemented in other communities that have opened dispensaries and have been very successful. Positive identification through identification scanners, ID verification scanners, I should say. That's another anti-diversion measure and a way to provide for a secondary means of ensuring that nobody under the age of 21 gets into our facility. We want diversion is obviously a very important issue to everybody, to the community, so we're going to make sure that we use that secondary means of that system that's not necessarily required by the state, but it's something that we feel is really important. Safe transportation procedures will follow all the state guidelines, obviously, when it comes to that. Vehicles are nondescript. Product is transported with 2 agents. If the routes are randomized, the times are randomized, the day of the weeks are randomized. Those are all things required by the CCC. Alarm systems in the facility, video surveillance, electronic access control. Those are all things that obviously are very important in an operation like this and also required by the CCC. One particular issue to note, and I don't know that I mentioned this in the first presentation, was the video surveillance system. The video surveillance system is a very sophisticated video system. It's one of the top systems that out there on the market. It's a system called the Vigilon. And what that system does is it gives us the ability to use video and give access to that video to the police department. We can put an app on every one of Chief Mullis's police officers' phones and give them the ability to access our video system in real time, any time of the day, any day of the week. Why is that important? That's important because that's a force multiplier for his police department. If there were ever an issue at the location, an alarm goes off, to have that real-time intelligence by connecting into our system right from the cruiser is a huge advantage as a police officer. I wish every business, and I know the chief would probably say this as well, every business in the community had that capability where you could, as a responding officer, have that connectivity to a video system. Anti-diversion measures is another important issue. Selling, making sure we adhere to the strict permitted limits. I know the CCC has now just recently changed the regulations on that to make sure that product limits are only sold per day, not per transaction. So that was a recent change that they just made, which is really important in terms of anti-diversion. It was quite nice to see that they made that change in the regulations. So that, and training is an important aspect of that as well. Making sure our staff are trained in detecting suspicious behaviors One of the things that I trained in law enforcement was educating my employees and the business community on workplace violence issues. So I do a lot of training in that area, and that's something that I'll bring to the employees of Celtic Green. And adequate lighting is another. Obviously, we're going to comply with the local ordinances and make sure our parking areas, our entrances, exits are all well lit. And I mentioned our delivery procedures as well. The other thing I wanted to touch on, and I kind of scratched the surface of this in the last presentation, but I wanted to talk a little bit more detail about compliance. So compliance is obviously, this industry is a very compliance-driven industry. And one of the ways in which we will ensure that our facility and our operation is complying with every aspect of the CCC regulations is by utilizing a system called Power DMS. So Power DMS is a compliance platform that has been used primarily in public safety for almost 20 years now. And for the last few years, they have gotten into the cannabis industry. So they're in other states and have recently been involved in the state of Massachusetts. So one of my other clients that I do work for recently implemented that system, and it was extremely well received and effective in terms of building out your policies and procedures into that platform, matching those policies and procedures against all the CCC regulations so they are hyperlinked together and cross-referenced to ensure that you're meeting all the requirements. Anytime that the regulations change, they get updated within that platform. The other advantage to the system is being able to train your personnel. So all of our training records, all of our lesson plans on different aspects of the business that employees need to be trained on can all be loaded in that system. And you can create online testing within the system and ensure that, again, all your employees are trained against all the regulatory requirements for training. So it's a really robust system. It's something that Justin is spending considerable resources on to implement here in Malden, and I think it's going to be a tremendous advantage in terms of making sure or giving you comfort in Malden that we are meeting all the regulatory requirements and that this operation will be second to none for sure. Yeah, so I hit on that already. So I'll turn it back over to Justin if there are any additional questions.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
If, hopefully I got this right, you'd say depending on traffic and whatever, but you'd have one security person, but maybe more depending. But if you just have that one person, where would they be at a particular place, or would they be walking around?
Sure, that's a great question. Obviously, when we open, we will have, I estimate based upon my experience with other dispensaries that have opened, minimum of 4 security officers on site. You're going to have increased customer demand, obviously, when you first open. So you're going to need 2 officers inside, you're going to need 2 officers outside, ensuring that customer flow is going well. There isn't any loitering in the parking area. There's no consumption. Obviously, that's illegal. And so monitoring that issue and working closely with Chief Mullis and his department is going to be extremely important. And that's one of the things that I think is really important in the community is working closely with public safety to ensure that any problems that might come up, we can be nimble and flexible and deal with at a moment's notice. If we need to, having that open communication with the city and the police chief is going to be extremely important, because you have to have contingency plans for the unknown. There are always things, every community is unique that I go into. So what works in one community doesn't necessarily work in another community. So you have to be flexible, And we believe we have plans in place and have that relationship in place in order to deal with any issue that might come up, whether it be traffic, crowd queuing, or otherwise.
I have a question with respect to the consulting and compliance. So I think I made clear when we were deliberating last time that, I thought a big gap in the application was you don't have a consulting agreement with respect to somebody for regulatory compliance or retail marijuana in particular. I mean, nobody here has retail experience. Nobody here has marijuana experience
Except myself.
Correct, so that's what I'm getting at. So the only thing that was presented to supplement is this training program from your company, Sanctuary Medicinals. Can you explain to us a little bit of what that is?
Absolutely.
How long the training program is? Does that last during
Absolutely.
duration?
So maybe I should give a little background on myself first so we'll understand how long I've been in the business. So I own and operate 2 of the 5 dispensaries in the state of New Hampshire. It was a merit-based application process, which is unlike how Massachusetts is. We received one of the highest scores, so we were awarded the largest geographical zone. So we're the first to dispense and the first to cultivate in the state. We have 3 open dispensaries here in Massachusetts, 1 in Woburn, 1 in Danvers on Route 1, and a co-located facility in Gardner. Our next dispensary is opening in Brookline and Coolidge Corner. That's slated for January. And then we also have another dispensary opening on Tremont Street in Boston is our goal. So as a vertical, we're allowed 3 total medical dispensaries and 3 total recreational dispensaries. Most of the ones you'll see will be co-located. We took a slightly different approach and have medical-only dispensaries as well. We're also in the process of building a 1 million square foot facility in Florida and unrolling an 80 dispensary platform over the next 4 to 5 years. So we have a considerable team, well over 200 employees at this point, and I've been in the space for quite some time. So I met Justin about this time last year. We started to talk about how we could work together to get him the products that he will need for his dispensaries. So we really kind of signed on with each other in January of 2019. And basically how it works is we have created multiple brands within Sanctuary, and we have to be very careful with the people that we're working with and know that they'll be able to implement and understand our products. Although it's not an exclusive wholesale agreement, it is one that we can deliver on, which is extremely important. So if you're paying attention to what's going on in the state, I think we all know that there is a huge supply issue, especially on the flower side. We operate one of the largest facilities in the state in Littleton. It's a 36,000 square foot triple stack vertical grow. So that means we grow in 3 levels, really maximizing each square foot of the facility. That being said, we'll have no problem supplying 50 pounds of flower per week. Our facility can do north of 15,000 pounds a year, and it's in the process of being expanded right now.
Does that facility also service your 2 dispensaries in New Hampshire, your 3 in Massachusetts, the
Absolutely
one that's
can't,
coming in Brooklyn?
because each state is its own country. That's the best way to look at that. So our New Hampshire facility is in Rochester, New Hampshire. In this facility here only services our dispensaries in the state. But the most important thing to note is medical dispensaries have a considerable less amount of volume than recreational stores do. So our 2 stores in Woburn and Danvers that are medical only naturally do a lot less than Gardner. But a dispensary like this with the known competition that will likely be in the area would probably we do right now about 120 pounds out of Gardner a month. So I would think that this dispensary with the extra competition in the area would probably do right around there. A dispensary in Brookline or Boston, you're talking a considerable amount more than that.
Have you had any supply issues so far?
None at all. And Sanctuary takes in no wholesale from anybody, actually. So we supply all our stores, and we have plenty of product in the vault. Yeah. Which is very important, because you can't be open, and naturally, if you can't service
the customer and
So
patients.
you're full, you have your 3 licenses already in Massachusetts?
We actually a total of 6.
Well, as far
Because
as
3
retail.
medical and 3 rec.
So you're capped out as an
recreation.
entity?
Capped out at 6 total, that's right. Yep.
And now you enter into these wholesale agreements and training programs with third parties to...
Absolutely. We have a facility that can easily handle our own. We know that this state right here has a 100,000 square foot max canopy space, which is good. I understand why they did that, which makes a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, even at 100,000 square feet, you can easily service a dozen dispensaries, 2 dozen dispensaries, depending on the location and the demographics.
How
of
many
those
other
areas.
dispensaries do you have the similar contracts with?
Well, right now, we are supplying the only economic empowerment for Caroline's Cannabis, basically. We supply about 90% of their products. We also wholesale to, not really, there's just a handful of contracts like this that we have out there. The other ones, basically, there are no contracts whatsoever. And if we have product, except we get a lot of calls for product, we'll sell to them, basically. But these types of contracts take priority 100% over any other wholesale type contracts or contract purchases.
I don't mean to keep going, so if
No,
more
go ahead.
questions, I just have one question. So I'd asked about Connor the first time because he was initially your CEO, and then you mentioned that he transferred the IP for this to you. He too is opening up a dispensary for you guys in Mansfield, right? And I think you all are part of that same team.
Well, not for us, but yeah, we are going to wholesale to Connor as well.
Okay.
But obviously, he's not open yet.
No,
That's
he's going
what
through that
he's
process.
at least
So he's
a
another
year
contract
away.
that you would be wholesaling.
Absolutely.
How many in total do you think you have outstanding? Contract-wise?
Probably 3 that will open within the next 18 months.
And do you have any other suppliers that you've been talking to in case there is a supply issue?
Yeah.
Oh, I think.
Yeah. We have been. The problem is sort of marrying up the time it's going to take us to get to the finish line. We do have a lot of aspirations to work with, Jason can cover a large bulk of what we need, which going into this we wanted to make sure we had. As a smaller groups come online, Western Mass, different sort of cultivation facilities, we're interested in representing those products too. We feel very strongly about that aspect of the business. Massachusetts is a quality state, so I think it's going to be very important to have A-level products. The D level, C level will start to fall off the map as time goes on here. So,
But for right now, that's the only supplier you have talked to.
but no, we've been talking to others. The problem, like I said, is that to commit that far out or try to get commitment is difficult. So, we need to sort of see where we're going to be at, when the time comes. So.
Yeah, go back to the training program if you can, because I think my concern was there was no real consultant on site or lined up to help assist you with your first retail experience or marijuana experience, but if you can talk about the training program.
Absolutely. So really, we're here to assist in all aspects, and really the design is one of the most important parts of this operation. But that being said, compliance is the most important part of an operation like this. Compliance is everything. And we have an exemplary record when it comes to compliance, as we've been doing this for 5 years and haven't had one call for service at any of our facilities. Or, we deal with inspections very frequently, as you can imagine, and have never had any issues. But that being said, he'll be trained on compliance and even other members of the staff. So we have managers on our team that basically can float around. So what does that mean? We have people that I can pull from New Hampshire, shift around, hold a training class. We actually have an education center in New Hampshire, which is separate from our dispensary. We have 2 buildings at our facility, and we do hold education seminars there. Then also the banking, which I'm very familiar with, is another very important component of these types of operations. We will aid in setting up the transport services if needed, the cash, which is now mandatory by the CCC regulations. We will go over vault coverage, which is a very important aspect of the operation as well. You actually, in a store like this, you probably have 2 full-time people in the vault at all times, maintaining integrity of everything that's on hand. Will also assist in getting the right software systems in line, such as BioTrack or Trees or something like that. We currently use BioTrack. We've been using it since day one and have had no issues. Metric training is very important as well. There's actually classes on that now, and we have staff now that all they do is train all day, every day of the week. They go to different dispensaries and assist. So that's really the most important thing. I can say there's a lot going on, but at the same time, it's absolutely not impossible to learn.
Can I ask a question?
Anybody here?
I'm curious, how long does it take to train an employee that walks in the street and says, I'm hireable?
That's a great question. So medical is definitely different than recreational.
Right,
It's
but
more-
in this business
But in this one right here, basically, people would come in, they would be trained for approximately 2 weeks, and usually what they do is shadow first. So when you're bringing on a dispensary, an original dispensary, the very first one, the very first operation, that's slightly different. You would want someone in there, possibly from our team, that can really do training and onboarding. So you would start staffing at least a month before. They have to go through all the background checks, get registered with the CCC, get metric logons and things like that, and we could actually train these people like we have in our facility in Littleton.
So it's like 80 hours?
I'd say at least. And then the strongest ones that are ready to deal with the customer interaction, you would start them out, and then you would always have people part of the shadow process, basically. So they're not actually checking people out. Usually someone starts at the check-in process. They start understanding inventory and vault coverage. In this particular situation, there's going to be a lot of communication with that vault and the wholesaler, which could be me as well as other people, to make sure that the products are there. And then also the shutdown procedures of the operation at night and the open procedures. There's a lot going on here.
So with regard to the training, I understand from what you say, compliance is a major component. But I guess you could say that applies to any regulated commodity, whether it be alcohol or
Absolutely.
whatever. So within the training, is the trained employee given information that makes them knowledgeable about the product? Because other applicants have brought in some varied backgrounds in the medical profession, pain management, and the varying aspects of controlled substances. So I guess in the training, does it kind of illuminate the employee in a way that they're knowledgeable? Like somebody could walk into a liquor store and say, I want wine. Yeah, there's the aisle. You can go into another place that says that product is derived from grapes that came from northern Italy, the alcohol content is this, and all of the realities connected to the product. I mean, is this kind of
That's a really good
basic
point.
training, or is this something that provides insight into all of the nuances
This is where we
connected?
can really stand out in this, because we have our own cultivation site and processing and lab and commercial kitchen. So what we do with our staff, and we can easily do with anyone from his program as well, is take them through our facility. They understand and talk to the people who are actually manufacturing these products. We start on the grow, go over how everything starts there. This doesn't take weeks, by the way, obviously, but take them in, take them through the whole facility, all the functions. They get to meet the chemists, the biochemists. We have PhD pharmacologists. We have doctors on our staff, MD, board certified. That's part of the reason we have people like that on our staff, is because we're aspiring to do very specific product formulation work and go out on patents. But that, either way, that will significantly help anybody understanding this business. But that being said, we can't underestimate the power of a well-written SOP manual. And that I can tell you, there's been so much work on that. It's probably 6 times thicker than that piece of packet right there. But at the end of the day, that is a tremendous amount of IP that has been generated over the years. And that's what each person who's part of this program, you could call it an approved vendor list if you wanted to, would have access to. So I always say that SOPs are 90% of the program, and then 10% is really the individual person. You want your SOPs to be so good that even if your top director left, you would be able to maintain continuity of the operation. And at Sanctuary, we're also undergoing ISO 9001:2015, which is an accreditation process that is not mandated by anyone, but we're bringing it upon ourselves because we know that we have to, the problem that's in this industry is we're lacking standards. And we know that the day will come when prohibition is over. I think we can all agree on that, if not on the timing perhaps. But that being said, you can bet that they're going to have the federal government will have their agencies get very involved in this process, the standards, how facilities are operated, maintained, everything. So we are we look at everything as a big chessboard and say, okay, how are we going to make sure that if we build a facility, I'm really talking about a cultivation, processing, and lab, but of course we're making finished products from that end up in these dispensaries. How do we build a facility that will replicate the standards of a USDA type facility today? So that's one thing that we're very huge on in looking into the future, which brings us back to ISO accreditation. So within the next 6 months, we'll actually be able to put a stamp on all our products that they're ISO
Right, so
certified.
I'm not so much concerned about the product. Let me just ask somebody from Celtic. How many employees do you think you'll be hiring?
I think, well, 12 to 15 on any given day, so.
But how many employees do you think you have that are going to undergo the training?
25.
25.
Rotating schedule, yeah.
So potentially these are going to be 25 novices who are going to be totally dependent upon acquiring the industry knowledge.
I think we would be searching for novices. I think there's an abundance of, people that are capable and enter this business that have various types of experience. So I think that, we would just plug and play anybody, and that would be the goal, but there's also definitely, different expectations amongst the employees. The majority of them will be dealing with customers, whether at the point of sale, as a bud tender, or at the entry point, so they're all, somewhat the same position. Within the store location, you have a few people responsible for more important duties, which they would be trained separately.
Is there anything woven within the Celtic philosophy that deals with something you alluded to, the recognition of addiction in general, or the downsides of wrong use? Is that going to be somehow addressed on a regular basis through the business model?
Sure, well, I think that we can, I don't know how we would address on a day-to-day basis, but I think that through participating in educational programs within schools, we can be there to aid as sort of people who are doing this on the retail, public level successfully, and it can be done. So I don't think that we'd be trying to cast a negative shadow on drugs, and I think there's a lot of research that shows that, marijuana is different than many other drugs. We're always aware of that. That's kind of the number one thing in this business is, it just get a lot of opinions.
If I could add, Mr. Chairman, to that, just in terms of the training program and the state requirements under the responsible vendor training that every operator is required to cover. There are certain things you have to cover under state regulations in your training program and ensure that those are done in a responsible way. There currently isn't a responsible vendor program that they've rolled out yet. I know they're in the process of licensing, the licensing process to get certified to teach that program, which once it does get rolled out, it'll be an independent company that has to do the training. and meet all the requirements of the regulations, like education on product, education on diversion measures, ID verification, all the things that the state requires under the regulation, those are all going to have to be taught by an independent contractor. You won't be able to do those internally. So that, I mention that because it dovetails into this arrangement with Sanctuary to be able to have an independent operator be able to provide that training to us is an asset to the company.
So I do want to be sensitive to time, and I want to see if anybody, I do have just one question, because clearly this is an important relationship given your newness to the business and what you bring to the business. So I guess my question is from your perspective. You've got your own retail stores, you've got a significant corporation, you've got a lot going on. This aspect that is providing sort of the training and expertise for somebody new to the business. So there's part of it that says, well, you're training a customer, but you don't really need to, given what's out there right now in terms of no shortage of customers. So I guess I just want to understand what's in it, and I don't mean financially, but why does it make sense for you to be bothering with this in this current market? And I only ask because it's an important part of knowing
Absolutely.
that that's there long term.
That's a really important question, and at the end of the day, it's not every operator is created equal, because there are operators operating right now in the state that we would not sell our product to, period. Why? Because it would hurt our brand. That's the reality. And it's just, if someone is going to sell our products, because remember, we're national, we're multi-state operators. So it's a little bit different than just having an operation in just one state. We have to be extremely cognizant of where our products are, how they're being sold, the education component that goes with it. So we take it on ourselves to hire professionals, like what the chief was just mentioning there. What we would do in that case, for example, we just donated vape detectors to the school system in Woburn, and we paid for that. But we also have a specialist on our team that's LADAC certified. This is the type of stuff that they deal with all the time outside of the cannabis space. So we feel that, our products will definitely not be the cheapest wholesale products out there. That's the truth and an accurate statement. However, our value add to this, to a new operator getting into the space, is tremendous and worth its weight in gold. So we want to make sure that we work with people that can really uphold the integrity of our operations over the years and can really do the best by our products.
So you said you guys met in January of this year?
No, we met before that, but we really kind of started working together in January.
How did you guys meet?
I approached him.
Yeah.
So I live local to where his facility is. And then at the time, they were sort of posturing themselves as one of the first in the state. So geographically, it made a lot of sense. And then I sort of started looking at what they had been up to in other states. And it seemed like, at that time, my goal was to sort of get aligned with somebody who was doing this and maybe doing it on a big scale, so that looking down the line, approaching me for a retail license and having no viable wholesale supply gets us nothing. So you kind of have to start there and go backwards. So that's how it started, and the program was introduced, and then we sort of agreed to go down that path. And then we just connected out this application from about it.
Nelson, you had something?
Yeah, Jason, how many, sorry, no, Jason.
Happens all the time.
Which one? Jason. That's Jason, Justin's next one.
I think
He's talking to Jason.
I'm trying to have it out.
Thanks, Paul. How many times have you gone through this mentoring system with a new business similar to what Justin's trying to do?
That's
And has it ever not been successful? And how long does it take? I know it's a bunch of questions. How long does it take before you take the training wheels off and take
I think
on their own?
number one in this state, nobody is open yet who's been really approved that we're working with in that sense. How long it takes, the longer the better, because I'm really part of the process from the start, which is great. So I've been providing advice and working with Justin for quite some time. And even, say, for example, the design of the facility, well, I had input there. And it's something that, I mean, we're building a prototype that will be rolled out over 80 dispensaries in another state, in Florida. We know how this is supposed to be set up, how we can get people through, what makes them the most secure, all this pertinent information. But also, you know, like I was saying, the coddling of the relationship over time and seeing this whole project through, it's invaluable. You can never put a price on that. I mean, we've been very successful in every state that we operate in. We've had no compliance issues. We've had no calls for service, knock on wood, of course, because anything can ever happen. But you know, there's a lot of egos in the space, and I always like to say we leave the egos at the door at Sanctuary, and we just want to be judged on execution. So that's what we do day in, day out, and we get it done. We say we're going to do it, we do it. And not to mention, we enjoy tremendous relationships with all the municipalities we're in. You could call any one of them or all of them, and I know exactly what they would say, because we're in constant
If
communication.
we just have one last, I don't want to be sensitive to that. We've got a schedule that we wanted to, well, we've got to go quick, because we committed to 45 minutes, so if we go 30 seconds each, and then we'll wrap up.
You originally,
What's that?
okay, I'll talk. You were applying for other licenses in other cities. Are you still actively pursuing those?
Yes.
Okay, and you will also be working with Jason on the same type of relationship with those other cities?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Which cities?
One in Boston right now, which I disclosed last time. It's still very early process.
Okay.
You know, do you have anything else?
Yeah, how would you respond, and either of you can handle this, how would you respond if somebody had a concern that this was your way of getting around the limits to your licenses by using somebody who's new? What would your...
Well, I think there's full disclosure when you go in for the state application. If Sanctuary doesn't have any equity in the license, which, by the way, we could technically have 9.9% of every single license in the whole state and meet the threshold of the law. But we carry no equity in no other license in the state other than
So
Sanctuary.
it's truly an arm's length vendor wholesale?
Well, we know that our facility can produce extra product than what we need for our own dispensaries.
Right.
So naturally, we have to have a wholesale avenue to sell some of our products. Then on top of that, it really behooves us to get our brands into other stores. I mean, statistics show, we're not going to be the only product in the store, that's for sure. But statistics do show and prove that the more products you have in your store from different vendors, the higher your sales are. There's no question about it. You're offering more opportunity and a differentiation of products.
And one more comment. Thank you guys for coming, because I think you guys weren't able to come last time, so I appreciate you guys coming this time. It said in the application you guys were looking to move to Massachusetts if this was to be successful. Is that still true?
Absolutely. We would definitely be looking.
And we're excited about it.
We certainly appreciate you guys' time. I know we're running a few minutes over, but great conversation for us to understand, I think, a critical component to the proposal that you have, right? Because every applicant's got something a little bit unique about it that we want to hear a little bit more about. So we appreciate it. I think it was helpful for us. And again, thank you.